This is building modern web applications with METEOR, and METEOR JS is a pretty interesting stack of technology. So what I thought we'd do is start out and just talk about METEOR, how it works, a little one-on-one on it. Some of you guys may be familiar with it already, and then kind of move into some code demos and some application demo. I think everybody likes demos and real things happening, and you know, things can fail and all that, but I'm not going to give myself an escape for that because it'll all work perfect, I'm sure. So this is the definition of METEOR, and hopefully you can read it from there. But METEOR is an open source platform for building top quality web apps in a fraction of the time, whether you're an expert developer or just getting started. And so I think the audio is just a tad hot.
Actually, I'm going to move that microphone because you're talking off axis.
Yeah. Zoom on the screen and all that stuff too when we get to the code. So I'll talk through the slides. We'll make do. Like things happen. We deal with it. We keep rolling. But anyway, METEOR is a pretty neat thing. This is just from METEOR.com. It's kind of their marketing stuff. So take that for what it's worth. But we're going to really talk about what it really means. So what is METEOR? METEOR is basically a stack of technologies. There's a lot of open source existing technology in METEOR already. So Node.js, MongoDB, jQuery underscore. There's a lot more. So these guys aren't trying to, the community is not trying to basically rebuild everything from scratch and start over like a lot of other projects. Let's use what's already out there and make that work. It's also a library of packages that all have functionality, and so out of the box you get a lot of capabilities. So we'll talk about some more of that in a bit. In command line tools, or a tool, there is a METEOR tool that does all of the core functionality of METEOR, like adding packages and starting METEOR apps and backing them up, deploying them, that sort of thing. So that's built into the METEOR tool. That's the basics of what METEOR is, though to me it means a lot more. So thank you. Cue laugh. Thank you. So the METEOR community, I just want to kind of mention this. This is real important to me. I've done Drupal development for a long time, and METEOR's been the first thing I've seen come along. And I'm talking not just the technology, not just any one aspect, but it's the first thing I've seen come along in a long time that I think is the next thing, or could be the next thing. And we never know what really is going to take off, but there's some things I thought I'd mention about that. And so some reasons for that is the METEOR development group. This is the group that works on the core METEOR project. So if you go to github.com/METEOR/METEOR, this group of folks that are behind organizing it, it's still open source, and people make pull requests. You can make a pull request and work through issues too. But those folks in the METEOR development group actually have some funding going on. That's all they do full time, and they're just trying to get to a 1.0 and keep moving from there. So it's not the magical 1.0 yet, but there's a lot of neat things happening, and there are some production METEOR sites out there running already. So people are already putting some trust into it, but it's still not complete for 1.0 from what the community thinks it should be. And the reason I list the community as a separate thing is there's a thriving community of people who write METEOR apps and write packages and submit packages. So METEOR has a library of packages that comes with core, but you can also add your own packages. So that makes it pretty cool. And so the community is great. The other thing that's nice about a community is a community that's welcoming and actually answers questions and it doesn't make newbies feel kind of vulnerable to ask a question. So from my experiences, the METEOR community has been great for that. So this is a little bit more of what is METEOR kind of stuff, but this is from METEOR's website. Kind of thought I'd talk through these 7 principles of METEOR a little bit. So and this is some of what makes Meteor, I think, a little different. So I kind of want to get into that. Data on the wire. So, and we'll go into some slides on a little bit more specifics of what this means. But once you connect to, in a browser, a Meteor server, and you're going to get an initial payload of all the templates and scripts and all those things that run. But after that, everything is just JSON back and forth between client server, between two Meteor servers. Everything is JSON. So we're not sending full payloads of HTML. So that's a good thing. So it's almost a web service-like thing going on there out of the box. It's one language. It's just JavaScript. I think any of us that have worked in other platforms and frameworks where you're juggling between multiple languages, that sometimes can be a challenge. And so there's lots of reasons there. It's nice. I definitely like just focusing on one language. And folks can argue if JavaScript is the best language to be the one language. It's working for me, but everybody's got opinions on that. But it is one language, so they picked one, and it's good. So database everywhere. So Meteor right now, I think they do Redis now. They can support Redis, but that's pretty new. MongoDB is fully integrated with Meteor. That's the database to use with Meteor. In the future, they're going to have additional databases that connect up. There's some reasons for that, and those include the fact that the way Meteor works and the way the reactivity works, which we'll talk about, it's just a lot of integration with a specific database layer that's going on. And the rest of database everywhere is there's actually a mini Mongo type database that runs in the client side. So you've got some local storage that goes on, and that stores and keeps collections of data local. So we're not making trips to the server every time. And there's controls in Meteor for when you want to go to the server, when you just want to work locally with client data that you already have. So you don't have to waste any of that time and that effort. Latency compensation. So this is really slick stuff. When you save, let's say that you're going to submit a comment on a blog post. When you enter your text in the comment field and you hit submit, you hit save, whatever. The way Meteor usually works with Meteor applications is that comment is saved first to the browser. So it looks to the client or the user that's using it like, wow, that was fast, that was immediate. As opposed to a lot of other traditional web technologies where, it goes to the server, it churns, and we buy big server farms because of that. In Meteor land, it saves first there, and then it does async back to the server and saves it there when it can, which is usually pretty quick, but it does that in the background. So that's really slick. Full stack reactivity. I know we all love the term full stack, and I'm sure everybody's resumes are full of we're full stacks in this and full stacks of that. I always like that term, but what they're talking about here, the reactivity, is that you can basically components throughout Meteor, if they're set up correctly, actually are reactive automatically because of the relationship that Meteor Core has, with the database and with all the other socket connections that are being made across the internet. So if somebody, if I'm looking at a list of blog posts and somebody somewhere else in the world makes a change or edits the title, and I'm on a page where that title immediately updates. And what I mean by immediate is by the time it makes the trip, all the way back to the clients and all that, but I don't have to refresh the page. It just happens right there in the browser, which is awesome. Embrace the ecosystem. This is kind of what I was alluding to earlier about all of the open source components that Meteor uses. So instead of trying to say, hey, my Kung Fu is so good and I can write all of this stuff myself, I don't need underscore, I don't need jQuery, I don't need all these other tools. Basically, Meteor is saying, hey, if there's tools out there that exist, we're going to pull them in, we're going to use them as needed, and we're not going to rewrite them. So, but it's also the ecosystem refers also to the package system and that whole packaging community. I think there's already 1,000, 2,000 packages out there, and somewhere in that range. So that's pretty slick. Simplicity equals productivity. So a lot of things with Meteor right now are really simple to do and really amazing. And then there's things that aren't which we've been kind of getting into recently. Some of the guys working on the project will demo today. But yeah, so there are a lot of things simple, and their push is to make things simple. If folks remember what it was like at the beginning of the Rails framework, revolution, where just the reason people fell in love with Rails is because it was so easy to build a web application, and that at that time, Rails has matured, and things can get a little more complicated, and Rails apps get more complicated, and that sort of thing. But they're trying to recapture that simplicity, but also keep that simplicity, throughout the project as it matures. So that's something I think is real important, and it also makes Meteor accessible to people learning to develop web applications. So you can get deep. You can do things yourself. You can, if you're a whiz at JavaScript, you can do all that stuff. But you can also do a lot of things with a lot of helpers and pieces like that to make your apps quick and simple and easy to teach somebody how to use. So installing Meteor, this is installing Meteor. So, that's what. That's it. It's hard to see, but it says that's it. That's all there is. You're installed, and what that means is you've got a development environment installed. Meteor's going to give you a version of Node that's compatible with it. It's going to give you a MongoDB instance that it controls, and it gives you the Meteor command line tools, all the packages. It drops a .meteor folder in your home folder where all that stuff lives, where all the updates live. But I know that's tough. But we could all, if we were allowed to have devices here, right? We could all just go ahead and just do it. So we don't here, and we honor Berman for that. So that's cool. So creating a Meteor app. We're going to type Meteor create my new app. It's created and basically tells you can CD into your app and type Meteor, and we ran it, and it's fired up the app. That's running a Meteor app out of the box in development mode. So when you deploy this in production, there's methods for bundling up the apps, and there's provisions with Meteor made. So when you deploy and things like that, everything's minified, and different switches can be set for production usage. But this is all you need to do to get started with Meteor, which is pretty cool. So I mentioned earlier we'd talk a little bit about what makes Meteor a little different. This is probably the big thing. So traditional web applications, as we have a lot of them now, and including some of the new Node stuff, and this goes across. This isn't just WordPress and Drupal and things like that, and old Rails type frameworks. This goes even to some of the newer stuff that we're all using. These traditional web applications, you got a web server, you got a database, data moves between them. The client makes a request. The web server sends back a whole huge glob of HTTP. It just, and that's when we sit there and it's running. It takes a long time. The servers, we'll buy more servers because they're cheap, and it's okay. We'll put varnish on it. We'll use all these other caching tools. But that's still, we don't like to go around telling our clients this, but that's still a dumb terminal, basically. You're kind of, it's pretty much just old school, dumb terminal talking to a mainframe in a sense. The browser's a little smarter, and you've got some front-end capabilities, but in a sense, that's the trip that it's making. So Meteor applications, it's a little more complicated, but you really don't have to think about the complication as much. Though as you start to develop more complex apps, you have to be aware. But there's still a database, there's a Meteor server, you still have a client. But what's different here is when the client makes the connection, makes a request, there's an initial package payload that comes down, and that's basically sending JavaScript and template data and all that sort of stuff down, and also the data model. The client will then poll for changes. There's some different, I'm not going to get super deep into the polling the way it works, but it's pretty slick. There's some different ways that when you deploy production that you can do. You don't really do polling, actually. It's MongoDB actually takes over and exposes its operations log, so that you can actually, the client can check for, and a Meteor can check for changes almost instantaneous. But anyway, the client polls, and then data updates come in. But keep in mind that those data updates, they're just JSON. We're not pushing full HTML down every time, and that makes a huge difference in performance. But it also does something different. This is now a client-server application. I mean, you're running data models local. You're running JavaScript local. You're running same thing on the server. The same code in Meteor can run. You can have JavaScript that runs. It's identical on a server and client. So those are some key differences with Meteor. So again, this is kind of what I mentioned earlier with the blog post as an example. The client, they save the comment on the blog post, so it makes a local DB write, and then a bit later, which in our terms is really fast still, but we write asynchronously back to the Meteor server, which stores it in the Mongo database. There's some reconciliation done if there's a conflict, and Meteor does a lot of help to deal with that for us. So if there's any delays. So I want to talk a little bit about DDP. This is the Distributed Data Protocol, and this is actually what does the magic. There's a lot of magic in Meteor, and this is what does a good bit of it between the client and server, and can be between two Meteor servers too, by the way, which is kind of cool. So again, this is actually a specification that the Meteor development group developed. So this is something that they kind of cooked up themselves, but it's using JSON field specifications I mentioned. It's all, the principle here is just you're flowing data back and forth between client servers, and you can make remote procedure calls from the client to a server. And also there's DDP now clients for iOS, for Objective-C. There's I believe I think Ruby may have one, and I can't remember what other languages have them, but at any rate, you can actually do DDP from other languages also, and do those remote procedure calls. So the thing that you deal with most of the time with DDP in regards to Meteor, and you don't really think about DDP when you're using it because you don't have to really worry about it, but it's good to know it's there, is the client subscriptions to a set of documents. So the Meteor server actually sets up, and I'll show you some code on this, but it actually sets up publishes a set of data from the Mongo database, and then the client actually does a subscription to those publications. So that, and then DDP kind of manages all of those transactions and reads and writes between those. All right, so demos and code. So we can kind of get into this stuff here and get to the fun stuff. This is where it gets really fun. So, and I'm going to zoom in, do some zooming, and do some stuff here to make it a little easier to see. How big do I have to make it? Is it huge? Is it? I don't know how big or small to make it, but we're gonna go with that. So, Meteor, the Meteor command. If I just type Meteor, it's going to run a Meteor application if I'm in the folder. But I'm going to do Meteor help, just give you an idea. That's too crazy big, insane. There we go. Move this guy away. There we go. So anyway, there's a lot of commands here. There's run, and you can create new projects, and you can upgrade projects. So update actually goes out to Meteorland, updates packages, updates the core. You can add remove packages. You can actually, with Meteor Mongo, jump straight into a database and work with it through command line. And the Meteor deploy, in this situation with the client, Meteor.com, the Meteor development group actually provides hosting, free hosting. So you can say Meteor deploy in some name, and it'll become like whatever that name is, .meteor.com. You can put your own, C name in there, and there's a way to configure it so you can have your own URL. I wouldn't necessarily say that right now it's what you would host a large application on or whatever, but it's fantastic for putting applications just to test or show somebody real quick. It's a great way to do it. Meteor log shows you the logs on that, the logs actually running on the server that you've already deployed. Anyway, there's some other things here. Meteor search will let you search for packages. So I can say search for famous. It's going to go out and give me everything that's got Famous in it. That if we want to run Famous in our METEOR applications, which there are ways to do this, and it's pretty cool. So there's some packages, and you know the routine from here. This is like any other package manager. You're going to then go, now I need to go find all those on GitHub and figure out which one's the one I want to use and that sort of thing. So that's how that works. Any questions so far about the METEOR command line tool? Or is that good enough intro kind of to get into it? What I want to show you guys now is the app, just an app example with some code demos. This is Sprint Queue, and this is this is github.com/shrop/sprintqueue. So anyway, I'm going to try to. I'm glad I don't have to work with a screen ratio like this day to day because it would be very crazy. So Sprint Queue is an idea that came out of a need that we had at Classic to list some open source issues and have some organization around them to let developers during their 20% time or whatever to work on some issues without going to Drupal.org or going to GitHub and going, gosh, there's a million issues. I have no idea what's important to work on or what would be good to work on. I need a starting place. This is a way that primarily, a lot of times, senior developers could throw issues out there like this would be great for somebody learning. Other people could just say, I need help with this, throw an issue out there. And it's ultimately a list of issues with some GitHub integration. So we're not duplicating an issue queue, but we're just basically making a list at Classic of the issues that are out there to work on, but that are open source. But really the use case I'm most excited about is actually for managing sprints, and that's really what we're getting it for. And that's if we have an open source sprint, and I don't know if anybody, how many people participate in open source sprints and that kind of thing, hackathons or so what an open source sprint is. It's a time you kind of round table around, getting enough more people around that are interested in it, and you say, hey, we've got this functionality we want to work on or add to some open source project. And you're going to have a list of, hopefully an organized list of issues somehow. That's what where Sprint Queue comes into play. And you're going to present those, you're going to organize it, and you want to rate, what are these documentation code? Are they easy? What's the difficulty? Easy, medium, hard kind of issues to work on. That way, no matter what level somebody comes in at, they can grab something and work on it. So the idea of Sprint Queue is somebody could actually click a button and claim an issue right there from the page and work on it during a sprint. When the sprint's over, it's a nice way to see what's been accomplished. And we've also gamified it a little bit, so we're doing rankings. We're working on a ranking system for it, so people can compete a little bit. It'll be a nice experiment to see if how people like that. But I think it's kind of cool. So anyway, this is Sprint Queue. I need to actually fire it up. We're going to type METEOR. This is where I hope it works. Running all this local. We're starting MongoDB. We're starting the app. Look at that. And I've got some console log stuff happening there. So anyway, so we go back to this page. Okay, so we're logged out. And I don't know, you guys can't see that, so I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in a bunch. It's responsive, so it's kind of throwing the rankings below, but that's cool. So at any rate, we got to sign in with GitHub. We need a way to track who people are. We assume if somebody's developing or working with this kind of stuff, they probably got a GitHub account. If they don't, then we quickly say, get a GitHub account. Why do you not have one? You should have one. Even if you're writing documentation, you may need one because we have people that write documentation and submit markdown files, and that's fine. So get a GitHub account. It's a freebie, but we have to know who the person is. We at least know with GitHub they're verified. You can do the same with Google. But here's some magical stuff. So when I needed to add GitHub integration, and I promise I'm not trying to sell this as super, super simple because there's some other things that went on, and Brian worked on some of those things for the integration. But to do the login, I pretty much typed METEOR add accounts-GitHub, and it added GitHub login functionality with OAuth. So if you've ever done OAuth implementation, and I have in any other application, that's pretty impressive and quite enjoyable. to be able to do that. And so that's that. So GitHub integration and Meteor comes with Google. I think maybe Meetup, maybe not Meetup, but there's several OAuth implementations, and there's some community ones that are out there too. But right now we can just see a list of sprints, and we can actually go into them. We can see the list of issues. We can go back, but we're not authenticated. I'm listed as a ranking. I have 49 points. That's not real. That's kind of just hard-coded in there right now. But if I want to log in, let's see here. It's kind of yanking me over to the other page here. I'm going to refresh on this one here. There we go. Okay, well, I'm authenticated on this version. So we're going to use this. So hopefully everybody can see that pretty well. So what I want to do is kind of using this app, and you know, something that I really wanted to do with this presentation was make sure to show something that is real and not the normal. So you know, the normal example. So you can go to Meteor, you can install it. There's a to-do app and a leaderboard app, and there's some built-in apps. But a lot of Meteor presentations show those off because they're easy to show and they're there. But I want to show something that's a little, you know, something we're really working on in the open source community that is actually showing that it's more than just some of those baseline examples. So Sprint Queue, we've got it going here. And I'll show you some functionality. We can add a sprint. We'll say we're doing a demo BlendConf sprint. And we'll just say demo BlendConf session, whatever. And we're going to hit return. And then, I don't know if you could see it, but it popped in right at the top of the list right there. I'll do it again real quick. I'll just throw a test in there, and everybody watch the top of the list and see it pop in. See it pop in? That was fast, right? Is your web application that fast? We won't tell the bosses that. But the thing is that why is that fast? That's fast because when I did this on this browser, it has nothing to do with me necessarily being running it local. It's saving actually to the storage I mentioned in the browser side first. In the background, it pushed it up, so that is now in the Mongo database. But it actually saved it into right into the browser first, and that's how you see that immediate need. So I can click the archive button, and we don't want to allow deletions of the sprints, but we want to archive them. We'll probably have an admin functionality at some point to handle deletions and keep people out of things maybe that we need to, but we can hit archive. See how fast the archive took it away? So that's pretty slick. So and there's ways to modify how it handles it. From what I understand, I haven't had to dig into that part yet. But what I understand about that so far is that let's say that we edited a title, two people's, one right before the other. So the first person in, they got it. The second person, it's going to save initially to that local, so they'll see the change. The client will see the change. When it goes back to the server goes, It's going to automatically send back and say we're canceling that transaction, and it puts it back to the state of the person that beat them to the change. Right. But like I said, I think there's some ways to tweak and modify. I'm not completely clear yet on that, but it's something I think we're going to hit at some point, especially when you start having many people, working on it at the same time. Great question. All right, so I've got an incognito Chrome window open, and you can see that demo BlendConf session is at the top of the list. So this is another little demo. This is kind of fun. So let's add another one. Let's see. Berman is awesome. I'm going to type this in the presentation. It's on videos because Berman made me have a hashtag or a discount code for BlendConf called Mark is Wonderful, which is a little weird to tweet. I didn't mind tweeting it to support him, but it was kind of funny. So we'll type Berman is awesome. Now, what should happen is it's immediately going to show up on this side, right, where I'm logged in. That's the client I'm using. Got another client running. Hopefully, it'll pretty quickly appear at the top of the list in this other browser window. because the clients will update. There we go. And I think when you see stuff like that, it clicks like, holy cow. Like, can you do this other ways? Yes, there's other ways you can already do this. Can you do it as easily as METEOR allows it to be done? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the other ways. The ways I've seen take a little bit more effort at times. But same thing can happen here. If I archive it, I'm pulling those right off the list. It's immediately updating. So anything that's reactivity. Anything you make reactive in METEOR is going to do that same kind of thing across all the clients connected at the same time all around the world. Of course, I'm running everything local here, so it's really fast. If one of these browsers was a client in China, and you're going to have the network latency of the internet that's going to be your thing, and that's just a reality. We can't get by that, but still, those folks aren't going to know. They're going to be like, hey, it's still cool that it updates right on the browser without a reload. So we've got some functionality here. So some more reactivity type stuff. I can do a search and get that. Again, you can do this with other tools and stuff, but to do this search, I'll show you some code in a minute. Real simple to do. And actually, we're doing a Mongo query against the Mongo database that lives locally in the client. We're not making a trip to the server. So that's how that happens so quick. And right now, I have to backspace out of search to clear it. We have an issue for that. If somebody wants to work on it, there's issues in the issue queue. So tonight, I'm sure you're like, hey, I'd love to go work on that stuff immediately. So we'd love that. We can edit the titles. So all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's routine, for web application stuff. But it's neat to see the immediate changes that are happening. So if we go into a sprint, the sprint queue thing, I do want to show this. This isn't wired up yet, but we've got some check boxes. We've also got search here on this page working, but same kind of thing. It's a little different. I had to implement that a different way, but it's still client-based. It's just I had to use underscore filter to do that because it's actually we're having an interesting time really getting into moving from relational databases to NoSQL and wrapping heads around that whole thing. And that is probably that's not a METEOR specific thing per se, but that is something that as a team we've had to work on. But that does create some issues sometimes. Just not issues with Mongo, but issues with us wrapping our heads around it. But so anyway, so that this is your issues. You can check them off when you're done. It'll mark through. We're going to have some more content on the issue rows that would let you have a button to claim it. Would let you have a way to see the status. So we want to poll GitHub and have it come back and say, here's the current status of that ticket, or maybe some more information about it. And the idea, once you're within a sprint, is you could enter an issue here, hit add, it would add an issue. But you would actually, and this isn't all wired up yet either, but we're close. We want it to actually, since it's just all GitHub right now, we want to make it so that you drop the GitHub ticket URL in, and it would actually go and pull all the data, the title and stuff, and just populate for you. So we're also going to have a difficulty, something in the road to mark the difficulty of the issue sort of thing. So if you click on the title, so if I click on the title of the issue, it opens up into a new window. I know it's had a conversation about this. I know it's opening a new tab. No, I don't do that on every website I make. That's kind of bad form usually. But thought was here that if you're in a sprint and you're working on it, you want to have a tab that's always open with that sprint queue list because that's what you're working out of, and it would just open a new tab to take you to the actual issue you're working on. So let's look at some code. We've got a few minutes here. I think timing's good. Here we go. And I will start zooming and stuff. So I'm going to zoom in on the folder structure here a little bit. Inside this METEOR app, and METEOR is very flexible. The framework is very flexible on how you organize files and folders. There's some rules. If you go to docs.meteor.com, that lists the API, but also there's a paragraph or two or three that talks about what folders are special in the framework, which ones aren't, how you can organize them, what matters, what doesn't. The .meteor folder, if you go to docs.meteor.com, you'll see that there's a folder. It's called folders. And what it is, it's a That is where your local development database is stored. There's information in there about the version number of Meteor you're at. It has information about the packages that you've got installed. So there's our packages we have currently installed, which is cool. And let's see. So some special folders. Client is a special folder in a sense. So anything you put in client runs on the client side. Collections is not special. That's just where we actually have we tell Meteor about the collections that we want it to know about, that we want to put into Mongo and work with it. So we've got some code in here for that. And lib is a folder that runs on both client and server. And public is for like public assets, that sort of thing. And server, and there's some other folders we're not using yet, but there's some other folders available. But server is server only code. So there are places you want to just run things on the server. So that's where you put that. And test, we don't have any tests. Bad us. But I put it there so we can be guilty every time we look at it. And we've got to get ignore in here just for some other bits. But let's look at some things here. So if I go into server and let's see here. So I've got this is a publication, example of a publication. My Atom thing is not working. Okay, so try to close the left side. So this is the Meteor publish. This is all you basically have to do to publish a set of data. So we have a collection called Sprints, lives in Mongo, and we want to return basically all of the sprints. This is web scale, because we're basically saying we're going to push every sprint to the client. So we probably can only have, can't have millions and millions. That's something we kind of know is there, but during development we can just rapidly develop, and then we can tailor that later and refine it so that we're only pulling down smaller sets of data and being a little careful about it. But that's all you got to do. That's the basics. You can, of course, we can have other publications, and you're going to have many publications in a complex Meteor app that are tailored to return just the bits of data you need for certain things. So that's an example. On the client side, let's see here. We've got a subscriptions folder, and this is kind of the comparable client side. This is how we subscribe to a sprint. This says subscribe to that collection, and we name it, and that's all there is to it. This is the easy way to do it. You can also, with the routing capability, there's a tool called that's not built into core. You pretty much install it called Iron Router, and that gives you routing capabilities. You can actually do subscriptions specific to routes, and that starts to get into a little bit more control and management of the data and what's coming to the client. So that is possible to do so. So I want to show a couple of templates. So the home page. So this is basically. So Meteor is using handlebars. It's a fork of handlebars. I think they're calling it space bars now. So, but they did have to fork it to make it work the way they needed it to. And there's a theming engine called Blaze that gives a lot of the front end theming capabilities of Meteor. But you can see it's pretty simple, like a lot of folks use handlebars or something like it. So we can include. This is just a free one if current user that's provided. That helper is provided by Meteor automatically if you have the user system built in and activated. This is pulling in a template partial called add sprint. So you can kind of follow the flow, and we can go back to the add sprint template and look at that. And this is what's getting pulled in to that. And so add sprint was just, remember that was at the top of our form on the sprints page. So let's see if I can find, where's my Chrome? Oh, I'm still zoomed like crazy, good grief, no wonder. So just to let everybody remember this, so the add a sprint, this is what we're dealing with right now, looking at. So when you click it's just an example. So when you click the add a sprint button in that form, in that add sprint template. This is the corresponding event routine, basically, that's capturing that information. So it just captures the submit form event, and we're basically grabbing the title the person inserted, and then we just do sprints insert. We insert the title in the database. That saves it. That's all automatically reactive. Notice the reactivity that we saw when we added a sprint and it showed up on multiple clients. That's all free. I didn't have to write any special code, or no one else did in the project to make that happen. That just automatically happens thanks to METEOR. And the last line is just to clear the value out in the sprint form field. So that's how you can kind of handle events. When we get into the listings, things can get a little bit more complicated when we get into the listings of the sprints, where we actually looked at on the home page where you see the list of sprints, where we've got some capabilities here for doing the searches and returning searches, which again is just a query. But remember, this query where the regular expression here is being checked, that's what's inputted into the form. That's all, again, it's all happening on the client side. We talked about this, we may have to move search functions, some of it to server side, just because of the amount of data and stuff we might have, and we don't want to have all that local. So you have to kind of think through some of this as you go, but for now we can kind of leave it all client side, and it's pretty handy to do. What else would be interesting here? Users collection, we're having to publish the users collection, but users is actually built in automatically. We didn't have to create the users collection. As soon as you add some packages that are part of METEOR to do users, it's there. Pretty easy. I want to do one quick thing that is exciting and show you guys too before we finish up. Let's see here. So this is not. I've got Sprint Queue checked out to another folder, and I'm running a newer version of METEOR. This is a release candidate 092, and METEOR, they are working to integrate METEOR tightly with Cordova. So folks familiar with Cordova, that's how you can get your HTML apps into, it's like PhoneGap, Cordova, they're real similar, if I get into particulars, but lets you get your PhoneGap, get your applications, your web apps into a phone application so that it's native and can be deployed on the Apple App Store or Android App Store. Windows App Store, any Windows App Store user? Okay, so So this is what so if you've used Cordova, you might appreciate this a little more, but I think you'll still see it. So I can basically type METEOR, add platform, iOS. You can do the same for Android. And I'll zoom a little bit here. So it added the platform. I've done this already, so it did it really quick. And now I can type METEOR, run iOS. This is literally going to take METEOR, package it up, run it in development mode along with Cordova. It's going to pull in any packages it needs. You can use plugins that are already native with Cordova. So this is still in the works, but it's neat stuff. So you're going to see us start up the application, and it's blowing up because I'm running on a different port. So I'm going to do this. This will fix it, hopefully. We're going to run it on port 4000 just to make it work a little better, since I'm running another app at the same time. So this will fire off. And I was blown away when I saw this. So there's already a camera package for METEOR that's in there. And it says started Cordova iOS. Again, can do the same thing with Android. And we are going, this is the thing that I normally don't like to do, but I have to in this case. I have to open up my firewall. Oops. Oh my gosh. There we go. So the way this is set up, I have to open up some firewall stuff so it can deal with it, because we've got servers running and things in the background. There we are. This is the iPhone simulator, and I can't show you the whole thing. I can't show you the whole thing, unfortunately, on this screen the way it's set up. But trust me, it is in the iPhone simulator, and that is running. That's running the Cordova stuff. There's a build command, a Meteor build, which is really just wrapping Meteor around the Cordova build, and it'll kick right into Xcode and let you then work in Xcode from there on out. So this is really cool stuff, and it really is going to, I think, take things to a whole new level with Meteor. I can't believe I said take things to a whole new level. Sorry about that. But it's going to be really slick, and I had to show you that before we finish up. And that's all I have to present. Folks are welcome for questions. I know people need to move on to other sessions and stuff, but feel free to ask questions, and we'll go from there. Thank you.